सो हरीश जी,
हाँ जी,
आप बताएं, आप कुछ इंट्रोडक्शन करें अपनी। आज कुछ खास है? आपका मूड क्या चल रहा है? सुना
अरे
दें।
क्या इस उम्र में अब क्या इंट्रोडक्शन। द ओनली थिंग एवरीबडी विल एग्री, प्रेमा, एट आवर एज we know who we are and where we are. That's about it. There's a video of me explaining that, right?
हाँ, वो बड़ा थोड़ा पुराना वीडियो था, बड़ी मुश्किल से ढूंढा, बट आई थिंक आई शुड शो इट टू यू, शो इट
Okay.
टू एवरीवन। लेट मी जस्ट शेयर माय स्क्रीन अगेन।
कौन हूँ, मैं कहाँ हूँ, मुझे ये होश नहीं। मैं कौन हूँ, मैं कहाँ हूँ, मुझे ये होश नहीं। किधर मैं आज रवा हूँ, मुझे ये होश नहीं।
See, I used to be tall. I used to be handsome like you. I used to have hair. क्या हो गया देखो।
ये आप, और आप थोड़ा लड़खड़ा के चल रहे थे, बट ठीक है, वी कैन डील विद ऑल दैट।
तो अपना इंट्रोडक्शन बोल।
अब ना मेरा बड़ा सिंपल है। आज मैंने कहा कि वीडियो की जगह आई विल जस्ट से अ फ्यू लाइंस अबाउट a poem that I wrote a while ago.
और डरा
About
रहा है अब डरा रहा है हमको।
नहीं वो, as I say, poets have some bad habits such as reading your own verse in public. तो दो लाइनें, चार लाइनें बनाता हूँ, which I thought was appropriate. खाना बदोश मैं खामख्वा नहीं। खाना बदोश is wanderer. खाना बदोश मैं खामख्वा नहीं, गुमशुदा हूँ लेकिन गुमराह नहीं। रास्ता
No.
हूँ बंजारा, कोई मंजिल नहीं। हैरत का हूँ मारा, कहो आवारा नहीं। So that's let's jump right in today, क्योंकि हमारी इंट्रोडक्शंस के अलावा we are going to be starting out with story of Anarkali. Anarkali की जो पहली, this was the first film that we chose. But before we jump into it, let's talk a little bit about ये आज का ये चार performances और चार actresses की कहानी शुरू कैसे हुई? How did we come along with it? And like engineers, we both of us that we are, हमने कहा कि एक formula बनाते हैं, क्योंकि we have done a movie, we have done a theme. This time we were trying to figure out whether we should do an actress or we should just do a movie. We said, let's come up with a 4x4 formula, 4 favorite actresses, 4 favorite movies, and we'll jam it together and somehow figure out what the common connections are. And as we started doing it, we realized that there are common connections even with a 4x4 formula. We are going to look at how each of these movies were the top movie of their decade. They were like commercially phenomenal movies. And in our opinion, at least, we'll debate it, they were also some of the best work for each of the 4 actresses we have chosen. And Meena Kumari's Pakeezah, Rekha's Umrao, Jaan, and Madhubala's Mughal-e-Azam are considered their career peak performance movies. So that was another reason. And then what's there not to like, that each of these beautiful actresses are an icon of their own generation. And I think Madhubala, Rekha, Meena, and to some degree, Bina Rai also is considered like, one of the most beautiful actresses of their era. Then when we started doing that, I said, okay, what's the glue that's holding it all together? It turns out that there's a whole set of Nawabi culture, Mughal history, Muslim social, a lot of interesting themes that are common across these 4 particular movies that were popular of those times. So ये तो हमारी theory थी. तो practically आप बताएं, हरीश जी, what is it about these movies that stuck to you, and how do we think about these movies being watchable today?
So I have, a very common person's take on movies. I want to know, do I want to ever rewatch a movie or not? There are some movies you've seen, एक बार देख ली, बस ठीक है, काफी है. Some you can watch after a few years. Like Godfather, जो भी हमारे घर आता है, so we make them watch Lawrence of Arabia. Can have a big screen, especially younger people, they have not seen Lawrence of Arabia or Godfather for that matter. तो उनको, and of course, it's terrible because I know the whole dialogue, each and every dialogue. तो मैं उसको, before the Peter O'Toole speaks the dialogue, I speak the dialogue. सबकी, तो my wife gets up and leaves क्योंकि बहुत खराब हो गया.
You're spoiling the mood, huh?
And then I pause after all the good scenes and start explaining whether somebody wants to understand it or not. So my criteria is, do I want to watch it again and again or not? So like Anarkali, अभी आते हैं उसके ऊपर, I'm not that interested, for example, in the whole movie. Acting खराब है, ठीक है, और खराब नहीं, ठीक है, black and white है, overacting है, वगैरह वगैरह. But एक के बाद 12-13 गाने हैं, एक के बाद wonderful songs. So I go skip from song to song. So my criteria is, does it hold interest over the years? That's it.
That's it. Simple as that. Would you sit down and watch the movie again? So, okay, so let's talk about each of the movie. We'll emphasize, we are not experts, as you well know, but we'll emphasize certain parts of the movie that we both enjoy, and we'll go off tangents if we don't care for it. So, Anarkali is a very interesting story because the movie is based on a play. I didn't realize. And the play is a literary play by Imtiaz Ali Tej. 1922 mein, this play was made, and the play was considered in literary circles and even today one of the milestones of Urdu literature. And as early as 1928, they made a silent movie on Anarkali because the play was so powerful and romantic and historical all combined. And then they remade it with sound in 1935. So I didn't realize that Anarkali had already had the play, and the story had already had a couple of reincarnations.
The first one, I think it was called Loves of a Mughal Prince. Yeah. And then Sita Devi was Anarkali. Could you explain why you keep interrupting me?
That's because we are Punjabi. That's okay.
Okay, okay.
So we are allowed. Allowed, na? So what's interesting about the Kahani, the story, I'll just say once, because the story is shared across two movies, the Anarkali, and the second movie we'll talk about in a bit is Mughal-e-Azam. But the story came from the play, but a lot of people debate whether it's a historical true or not. They debate, did Akbar really say that? The short answer is it's all historical fantasy. There is no truth to the story. In fact, the first Anarkali movie says so, there is no. And even later on, it is all made up fantasy. Now, there might be some folklore or myth, and there is allegedly a Persian couplet that was inscribed in some fort somewhere that talked about a beautiful woman, Anarkali. But after all, I think this is just an imaginative play. The beauty of that is you can take the story in any direction you want. The story is quite simply that of a beautiful slave girl from Iran who shows up in the ambit of the Akbar court, falls in love, and in fact, Salim, Jahangir later on, falls in love with the slave girl, and that upsets Akbar. And now it's a story between the father and son and how they both fight it out about his duties, and the girl who is, of course, caught in the middle. In the original story, like in good Desi movies, it's an unrequited love. She is sacrificed for the sake of the kingdom, and she's buried alive in the fort of Lahore, one of the forts. So that's kind of the story of it. What's interesting is that this particular movie, let's look at Bina Rai and talk about how Bina Rai was the main force over here. I'll give you a very quick connection about Bina Rai because she was actually a girl who rebelled to leave her house to become an actress in 30s, 40s, right? So she was born in 30s, like back in the 40s, which was unheard of that era, that a girl would protest and say, I have to go to Bombay and become an actress. And she pulled it off, and she met Prem Nath and got married.
She had more courage than you.
That hai. I did not had hunger strike to come out of my background. But what's interesting is that she had a 10-year career, etc. This movie is clearly her best. So that's about a little bit about the story of the Anarkali. What's interesting, you want to talk a little bit about the production, because it came out in 1953, and which is quite a while after the play had been around for a while.
So there was a Telugu version in 1955, not very good. Anjali Devi was the star. and Anarkali with two A's in it, Anarkali, I think, was made in Pakistan with Noor Jahan in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I'm told somebody named Sudhir played Salim. Sounds like a non-Muslim name. Somebody named Himalaya Wala was Akbar. I don't know these people. Noor Jahan, of course, everybody knows, Melody Queen. The production suffered because of low budget, and I watched some of it. I was hoping I would include some of Noor Jahan's songs. Theek hai, they don't stand up as well as the songs we know of, But then Chetan Anand decided he was going to make thing again, because he was, in love with Priya Rajvanshi, or he liked Priya Rajvanshi, whatever her name was, and he wanted for something for her. And Amitabh Bachchan ji, Shri Amitabh ji Bachchan ji,
What?
as Salim. हाँ, वो आप देखो क्या है. Thank God, बर्बाद नहीं हुई film.
Narrow escape.
But what happened was Madan Mohan was supposed to. We should do a program on Madan Mohan someday.
That's
Madan
right.
Mohan was supposed to do the music, but he died in 1975 while he was working on the soundtrack. So it as always, iski Jaan was going to be in the music also. Fir uske baad, then he tried to revive it in 1990s. He tried to Malika-e-Hind or Madhuri Dixit se baat ki, but it just didn't take off. So this is all kind of drama behind all this.
Wow.
So should I continue? मैं बोलूं?
No, I was thinking एक medley कर दें पहले शुरू, just to introduce the song, and then
वफाओं का मजबूर दामन बिछा कर दुआ कर वो मेरी खुदा से दुआ कर वो मेरी खुदा से दुआ कर जो बिजली चमकती है उनके महल पर वो कर ले तसल्ली मेरा घर जला कर दो सलामत रहे तू मेरी जान जाए मुझे इस बहाने से ही मौत आए करूँगी मैं क्या चंद सांसें बचा कर दुआ कर वो मेरे दिल खुदा से दुआ कर दुआ नहीं जाती जो समझाई नहीं जाती ज़बां पर दिल की बेचैनी कभी लाई नहीं जाती कभी लाई नहीं जाती मोहब्बत ऐसी धड़कन है
Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
but-
Beautiful.
Oh,
Beautiful
yeah.
song.
You know, I miss those kind of songs, you know. So these were composed by C. Ramchandra, and I'm sure everybody knows that he was Chitalkar Ramchandra, who was a singer. Before he was a singer, he had come to Bombay. He was tall and very handsome, and he starred in a film called Nagananda. So when the film opened, only 12 people came to see the film, and everybody left before the interval. So
Okay. At the end of his career?
yes, but he's smart enough, unlike me, to figure out that this line of work is not going to work for him. But he knew music, and so he said, "Ki chalo, I'll start singing." And so he sang many songs. I think "Mare Piya Gaye Rangoon" वगैरह जो भी है, चितलकर नाम से. And then he started composing also at the same time, and ran into Lata Mangeshkar. Unki jodi ban gayi. And he would take her, as you saw in Anarkali, you know, he pretty much, you know, one of her early career songs, one of the best songs of Lata Mangeshkar came from Chitalkar. Bageshwari was his favorite raga. So Lata Mangeshkar ke song to
वो तो कमाल के गाने हैं लता मंगेशकर के, and these are some of the classics. I wonder what favorite songs that people have of Lata. I can share mine. Give me a thought. But meanwhile,
तो लड़ाई करवाएगा सबसे.
नहीं यार, इतने सारे लोग हैं. I would love to hear in chat.
She sang 40,000 songs. Everybody is going to have. Let's see.
Okay, let's see what if you can put in one song. आपके जो favorite number one, which is almost impossible question. कि आपका number one song लता का क्या है?
दो तीन कर देते.
दो तीन कर सकते.
My favorite is Suno Sajina. I love that song.
Suno Sajna. There's the one. That's a lovely song. Anyone else? Chat me or otherwise?
I don't remember which movie and all that, but I once heard that you know, the flute player. What is his name? Pandit something. You know.
Hari Prasad. Pannalal Ghosh.
Yes, he said that was his favorite song, and so I went and listened to it. And if you see, there is a flute that begins, and in the flute is almost like a duet with Lata's voice.
Oh, there you go. That's a wonderful one. My favorite is that Pheli Hui Hai. You know, Sapno Ki Rahein. That's a beautiful from house number 44, I think. One of her early sweet melodious voice. So anyone else wants to dare to name number one song of Lata? Will be curious, because it could very well. This is the only reason why this movie worked. Anarkali, the music.
Yeah.
Aap bataye.
The star of the movie is the music. I mean, acting is very bad. I mean, direction is very bad. If you look at the scenes, choke, overacting, vagara, you know, even the little scene, Pradeep Kumar, you know, Bina Rai and all that, doesn't matter. Story is good, and the songs are unbelievably good and so forth. You know, America, surf Indians ko ye samajh aati hai. You show this to non-Indians, bolte hai kya dwa.
Exactly, and then you have to divert them to Lata. So, aap bataye, aapka Lata ka favorite kya?
Are dekh. So I think most people, when I ask, you know, I've been doing this for 50 years, so most people say, aapki nazaron ne samjha. प्यार के काबिल अच्छे, which is actually better in the movie Aligarh, which we will talk about some other day. तुम क्या जानो तुम्हारी याद में is very good, you know. अजीब दास्तां है ये.
That's right.
You know, yeah. Okay. However, if somebody put a gun to my head and say you have to pick only one song, one song, which is impossible. In it's like saying, you know, एक आप है, इसको तो सदा मिलेगी कि इससे लता मंगेशकर का एक ही गाना सुनना है. भगवान माफ कर देगा. तो एक ही गाना है, तो that is from परछाई, श्री रामचंद्र का म्यूजिक. That's why we're talking about it. कटते हैं दुख में ये दिन. You know that one?
पहलू बदल बदल के.
देखो,
वाह, एक्सपर्ट सिटिंग ओवर है. मुझे नहीं पता.
I don't think सुन कटते हैं दुख में ये दिन, पहलू बदल बदल के रहते हैं दिल के दिल में, अरमा मचल मचल के. नूर लखनवी की गजल है. I'll do one or two more lines. तड़पाएगा कहाँ तक ए दर्द दिल बता दे, तड़पाएगा कहाँ तक ए दर्द दिल बता दे, रुसवा कहीं न कर दें आंसू निकल निकल के. And the last one is उल्फत की ठोकरों से, उल्फत की ठोकरों से आखिर ना बच सका दिल, उल्फत की ठोकरों से आखिर न बच सका दिल, जितने कदम उठाए हमने संभल संभल के. Beautiful part of the thing is कि as everybody who knows music knows, it's not just the sargam, it's the pauses between the words. It's the pauses which is part of the music. It's not just the notes be sung how rapidly वगैरह वगैरह. इसमें pause कर करके गाती है, दिल निकाल के ले जाती है. Absolutely unbelievable. So if you are going to look for it, I have a request. Don't look for परछाई video. इतना खराब है, इतना badly directed video है कि ये गाना खराब हो जाएगा. Look for a cover with Sangeeta Melekar, Melekar. Sangeeta Melekar ne ghar mein, she has now sings all over the place. This is one of her early songs. She sang in her house with the musicians vagara. She gets it 70-80% as good as Lata Mangeshkar. तो पहले संगीता का सुनिएगा, करते हैं दुख में ये दिन, उसके बाद then you look for you know, the original version, or you can just hear the original version, which is unbelievable. So that's my choice.
Fantastic. ये तो आपने पूरी research हो गई है इस पे. But let's move to another, obviously one of the most famous songs of Anarkali. ये जिंदगी उसी की है. इसके अंदर भी कुछ दम है. So let's share a little bit more about it. And there's a bit of surprise in there. So let's.
So I was very young when I saw this movie, and I remember nothing else but definitely this last scene. You know, when she's, I mean, to this day, I found this traumatic. कि उसको दीवार में लगा दिया, you know,
Exactly.
and then beautiful song, you know,
Exactly.
it's in 2 parts, and, you know, it's like 6-8 minutes long and so forth, you know. This is unbelievably beautiful. So
That's right.
तो
So,
उसमें और गाने हैं. Let me talk about another one. दुआ कर, we didn't play that. दुआ कर गमे दिल. So it's in Rag Bhairav. You know, Shalendra wrote that. You know, Sri Ramchandra, of course, composed it. So I'll tell you a little story. So my grandfather in Khanna in Punjab, during Lohri, he would organize a 2-day event in the middle of nowhere. You know, ek din to mushaira. He'll get poets, you know, and shayars from all over Pakistan and in India, and to mushaira. And then another day was a local talent. You know, high school wale, local gaane wale. Lohri, you know, Lohri. Everybody knows what Lohri is.
कमाल है, लोहड़ी को नहीं पता.
पता नहीं भाई आजकल. I mean, it's a दुल्ला पता नहीं सबको नहीं बना. Dullah Bhatti was a hero of Punjab. He led a rebellion against Akbar. And so, you know, you have peanuts and bonfires and revelry, and you sing Sundari Mundari Ho. Anybody know that I'm talking about?
Yes,
Farooq? Sundari Mundari ho, tera kaun bichara ho, Dullah Bhatti wala ho, Dulle dhi bhi aayi. Never mind. Anyway, so during Lohri, they had that. So one young guy, a high school kid, goes on stage. So we were, you know, my mother and I, you know, and my grandfather was sitting in the front row, of course, you know, and big hall. And he starts singing Dua Kar Game Dil, except usko Urdu nahi aati hai, you know, a nice Punjabi boy, you know. And he keeps singing Dabakar, not Duakar, Dabakar Game Dil said Dabakar. And we are trying not to laugh, you know, sitting in the front row. Dabakar Game Dil.
That's मैं पंजाबियों के साथ अगर मैं होता आगे तो मैं बोलता दफा कर दे गमे दिल खत्म कहानी. Cut to the chase. दुआ शुआ तो छोड़ो. ते अच्छा, let's keep moving because this is interesting. Now we're going to switch to Mughal-e-Azam. Madhubala, and what a fantastic movie. But before we talk about the movie, what's interesting about the movie was making of Mughal-e-Azam. उसकी production 1944 में शुरू हुई थी और 1960 में movie आई है, 1960. So if you just think about it, 1944 pre-partition, between the making of the movie, India gained independence. India wrote a constitution. The world moved on. 16 years were spent in making of this movie, which is like part of the metaphor or part of the muhavra, or people started saying Mughal-e-Azam was like, you know, a never-ending project, which is going to be a sinkhole of money forever. That became the parlance of the entire 15 years of generation of filmmakers at that time, because it was such a ambitious project. And K. Asif, obviously the director and the force behind it, was considered like almost mad about it. What's interesting is that the story of Anarkali, the movie Anarkali we just discussed, became a super hit, was successful, while Mughal-e-Azam started before it and continued into production after it. So that was the scale and scope of this. What's even more interesting is that they had over the years found Nargis, Nutan, Suraya, like all these actresses were shortlisted till they settled on Madhubala. We'll talk a little bit about that. And it was the most expensive movie of its era. $3 million of that time were made in it, and 500 days of shooting. Wow. Over this. And average at that time was 40-50 days of shooting. So this went on. Even the Sheesh Mahal, the famous, we're going to see a clip of that famous scene, that set cost more than what most movies cost entirely at that time. So the stage at which this was being made was amazing. And obsession with songs, because obviously Anarkali was a huge hit because of the songs. They recorded so many songs that half of them didn't even make it into the movie. So that's the scope and ambition of it. And what's interesting about the movie, which I'll just couple of things and I'll turn to Harish, is that the screenplay of the movie was written by 4 Urdu literary figures. One of them is Kamal Amrohi, we'll talk about it. And the screenplay was such good, chaste Urdu that a lot of people figured out that how will people understand this? Like, this is going to play all over India. But it's a power of the vision and the story that they kept going, etc., etc. And the final piece I'll say before we move to the first clip and get Harish to talk about it is the only relevant thing is the story ending is changed. The story of Anarkali from the play as well as from the movie was changed in the last. And in fact, the film was done and about to be released where Asif had a change of heart. He said, no, the movie ending is too tragic.
I think the distributors put a pressure कि ये कौन जाएगा और मार देते हो उसको, which in my opinion messes up the whole movie.
Well, that's interesting because I think that was a more interesting, psychologically interesting movie because he wanted to show Akbar in a better light as a just king, etc. So they ended up having he eventually escapes and doesn't die. And that's kind of the story, how it became. Who's to argue with success? Because it's all fiction anyway.
I know. So I'll tell you, so they, of course, colorized it, except, what that one scene was in color, and then somebody, Atul trying to say something. What happened here? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
The chemistry behind Dilip Kumar and Madhubala was related to Madhubala's father insisting on taking Madhubala for movie Naya Door. That matter went to court. So in the film, both of them were not on speaking term.
Right. They were fighting. They were hardly speaking. They were very angry with each other. Yeah. And so
you're so right. And Dilip Kumar was fighting with the producer and the film director. Just the whole thing was a mess behind the scene.
Yeah, and there is a saying in film shooting, when the set and the shooting is very, very smooth, everybody loves everybody, it's going to be a bad film. Pata nahi kyun, but this is generally ye afwah hai. Whenever I was making when I would make a film, people would remind me कि लड़ाई होती है ना, when there's conflict वगैरह, generally the film, all the great films generally have, it's not always true, but often it's true and so forth. Anyway, I was going to tell a story.
So others, let's start with a clip while we get him back. And the clip is going to be about, of course, the first clip. Let me share my screen. This is a very famous clip of Mughal-e-Azam's.
Wait. Sorry, my dog came in. So I want to tell a story. So they made a colored version of it. Of course, like Spagla. Itna kharab hai. Some idiot. So इसमें scene में आसमान है, तो सारा आसमान नीला हो गया. सारे लोग भूरे हो गए, जमीन का रंग डार्क हो गया. पहाड़ सारे पेड़ हरे हो गए. I mean, just like a child coloring book and so forth. Anyway, ठीक है. Not horrible, but ठीक है. So अब हुआ, तो then obviously we have to go see it. So I was in Calcutta, visiting Calcutta. तो गए Calcutta गए, चलो देख ले हैं मुगल-ए-आज़म, फिर दोबारा देखते हैं. And उसमें full house. तो बैठे हुए हैं and color version हो रहा है. And the beautiful thing was that every song, पहले जब song शुरू हुआ, people started singing in the audience. The whole audience, like Rocky Horror Show ban gaya.
Yeah.
Every song, everybody knew all the words or most of the words and kept singing throughout. That was much more fun than the movie itself.
That's very common. So I want to kick us off with the Pyar Kiya To Darna Kya. That's a lovely song. We have a couple of surprises in that.
जीना इश्क में मरना और हमें अब करना क्या जब प्यार किया तो डरना क्या प्यार किया तो डरना क्या जब प्यार किया तो डरना क्या छुप न सकेगा इश्क हमारा चारों तरफ है उनका नजारा न सकेगा इश्क हमारा चारों तरफ है उनका नजारा पर्दा नहीं जब कोई खुदा से पर्दा नहीं जब कोई खुदा से बंदों से पर्दा करना क्या जब प्यार किया तो डरना क्या प्यार किया तो डरना क्या जब प्यार किया तो डरना क्या
Lovely, lovely.
Mughal-e-Azam in Times Square.
Times Square. कब से
So,
चल
I
रही
mean,
है?
this is not one of my the most favorite song from this film for me. It's in Rag, starts in Rag Darbari and goes to Durga. But क्या हो रहा है?
हो क्या रहा है?
Times Square में से क्या कर रहा है?
Yeah, this is of course. Those who know this movie has so much power that इसके ऊपर एक Broadway style production play बना. Recently, 2016 onwards, it's been playing for a while. First in Bombay and then touring all over US, starting with Times Square. ये उसका promotional video था. I had the chance of seeing the play. It's surprisingly, shockingly good. And it is a 2.5 hour of live performance, live, which is like Broadway style first time. And the dialogue and the translation from the movie is really well done. So I went in skeptical, but I came back very surprised कितना अच्छा है. And इसमें जो श्रेया घोषाल के आपने 2 clips लगाए हैं, उसके बारे में बताइए. What's your take on that?
So Shreya, became famous by singing Lata Mangeshkar songs, especially Ye Zindagi Usi Ki Hai. She started singing it, I believe, when she was very young. Can I bitch and complain about these Indian shows, Idol vagara? So I don't know if you watch them, Sare Gama, Idol vagara. I really want to watch them because there's some very, very talented young people. But I get so put off by the reaction of the judges and the audience. It's no overreaction, वो बोलती है उसने कहा वाह उसने कहा प्यार किया तो वो सब कहते इनको बेहोश होने शुरू हो जाते हैं. ये क्या तमाशा है, and apparently this is the craze like that. Every show like that, everybody's overreacting. Even like when you do Coke Studio India, not Pakistan, Coke Studio India, इतना overreacting. वो तबला बजा रहा है 1 2 3 4, वो झूम ऐसे रहा है जैसे मालकोस गा रहा हो. Anyway, so that aside, so we're running out of time. We want to talk about Madhubala quickly.
But quickly, Madhubala, so she was born Mumtaz Dehlvi, and of course she did 70 movies over her young life of 36 years. Right. And what's interesting is that she did all these movies. She had ups and downs in her career. Originally, people didn't quite see her. Then she had a string of successes with, Mr. and Mrs. 55 and so forth. What's interesting about this movie, which I thought was interesting, is that she was at her prime. And this movie was such a big, famous hit for her that she started getting prime roles after this movie because she put her on the map. But irony is, she said herself that her health was failing. She had a problem in her heart. She was congenital heart defect that she was born with. And doctors said, you can't take any more roles. So she hardly did 2 or 3 small movies after that. So she herself said the irony is that when I was seeking fame and I wanted the best roles, I couldn't find them. And when I found my pinnacle of career, I couldn't take on more roles. So that I thought was very poignant about it. What's your take?
Well, Frank Capra, I mean, she was considered was one of the most beautiful actresses of all time in India. Frank Capra, he was visiting Bombay during a film festival in 1952 or something, He offered her a job in Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But her father who very much controlled and was one of the reasons why she had a fight with Dilip Kumar, because he wanted to have, like somebody mentioned, he wanted to have a business relations. He wanted to use her as a partnership with Dilip Kumar. Anyway, that's a different story. But her father forbade her. And then they asked her, "Kya baat hai?" And he jokes and he says she can't eat with fork and knife. Look.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
I know. So another fact, Zulfikar Ali Ji Bhutto proposed marriage to her.
No, really?
Sachi baat hai. Set pe aaya, he came, to watch the shooting vagara, and apparently he was sitting around and he just said ki nikah ho jaye, and she laughed. She made it sound like it was a joke, and he was embarrassed.
And the history shall never forgive her for that. Pata nahi kahan chali jati history.
Pata nahi wo kahan chala jata. Anyway, so then she, there are talk about blaming K. Asif and other people on the production for making her sicker, because as it is, she had a heart problem. And तो उनको जो बेड़ियां पहनाई ना, तो apparently they were real. They weren't plastic or something. And she had to act with लोहे की जंजीरें पहन के. Then she had to work during much of the night. In some scene, I think the water is thrown at her, that was done 20 takes or 15 takes, vagara. So it was a very inconsiderate shooting. That's what the rumors are. And that contributed to her, apart from the emotional problem with Dilip Kumar and all that stuff, so and getting her very sick. So on a rebound, she married Kishore Kumar, because they were in Chalte Ke Naam Gaadi vagara and so forth, And Kishore Kumar had been going through a divorce. Those who know Bangla music and film, to Ruma Guha Thakurda, Ruma Devi Guha Thakurda. She was a singer and a very good singer and an actress in Bengal. And she started the Calcutta Youth Choir in the 50s and so forth. Anyway, he got a divorce from her. They got married, went on to London for the honeymoon. And then she got much worse. Her health got much worse. And that was it pretty much of their love life. She moved back to her parents and spent a few years after that. And Kishore and her didn't have much contact after that. So.
Surinder ji ne haath upar kiya tha. I want to hear what Surinder ji have to say.
Surinder.
Yes, Surinder from Pune.
Thank you. Can I come into it?
Yes, please. Surinder ji ke baad we'll invite you, Alam ji.
I removed my hand once Harish corrected the later version, the later part that Kishore a proposal was accepted by Madhubala. But what we are told in India, what we know the version, is that Kishore very well knew that Madhubala was going through this bad patch of her health. And knowing that fully well, he proposed so that before she breathes her last. That is the one version that I know.
Okay.
The first version was also right. Thank you.
True.
Alam Khan ji, aap bataiye.
Yes, I was going to, you mentioned, you started your talk with Anarkali being a play in 1922 by Imtiaz Ali Taj. And unfortunately, Anarkali was superseded by Mughal-e-Azam, which was much better in more ways than one. And I think the specific thing about Mughal-e-Azam is that each and every character was perfect in their performance. Each and every song was perfectly delivered by Lata Mangeshkar. And the poet was marvelous. If you listen to its music, it just takes you. And the other thing is that every character displayed demonstrated their instinctive characteristics. It wasn't sort of a put-up job. This is how people behave in real life. Everybody is concerned. Now, if you notice in that first dance by Madhubala, where she's dancing, Madhubala wasn't a good dancer, but anyway, she did her best.
Yeah.
But the way she hands over that knife in front of Akbar, that would have perfectly suited a stage play. And that is reminiscent of a stage play which has been adopted into the film. And if you notice that when she's singing, the Khuda se darna kya, to insan se darna kya, and if you noticed, Akbar then lowers his gaze in respect to God. And everything was so perfect in that film, and that's why the Americans, demonstrated it as a sign of their perfection.
So well said. So
yeah,
well
the Lachu Maharaj was the dance director for Pyar Kiya Darna Kya, and it is said that like she mentioned that she was not a good dancer, so they had substituted other actresses for the dance. So but apparently even before CGI, they managed to in other songs also, wherever she is dancing, put their face on it. I don't know how much of that is true, but that's what the rumor is. Anyway,
I would be surprised at that, because the figure was hers. It's not just the face.
Right.
And also the dance itself wasn't a perfect dancing. That was reminiscent of a stage play too.
Right,
because she was doing her best to dance. I mean, she was a pretty girl, so it was very attractive. But nevertheless, her movements were restricted because of it being a stage play.
Right. So, let's listen to some music.
One more thing. If people should, everybody should Google Life magazine's photographs of Madhubala. Life magazine did a whole feature on her. These are very, very simple pictures, black and white mostly, of her wearing a sari, of sitting around and so forth. No sexy things and so forth, no skin exposure or anything. Unbelievably, very, very simple, very, very beautiful. Anyway, chalo, aage aur gaane suna.
That's a gem. Okay, let's listen to few more. You have done some great medley of it. So.
हमें काश तुमसे मोहब्बत न होती, कहानी हमारी हकीकत न होती, हमें काश तुमसे मोहब्बत न होती। हमी बढ़ गए इश्क में हद से आगे, ज़माने ने ठोकर लगाई तो जागे। अगर मर भी जाते तो हैरत ना होती, हमें काश तुमसे मोहब्बत न होती।
So Khuda Nigeheban and Hame Kash Tumse Mohabbat Na Hoti are both in Rag Yaman. Those who are interested, Mohe Panghat Pe is in Rag Gar. Beautiful words, especially Hame Kash. There's another paragraph. And of course, we don't have time to play all that. Good words. Na dil tumko dete, na dil tumko dete, na majboor hote, na dunya ke dastur hote, kayamat se pehle, kayamat na hoti, hame kash tumse mohabbat na hoti.
Beautiful. And the music, of course, Naushad, who was famous for, know better than anyone, for bringing Indian classical music and making it mainstream. Yeah. And particularly K. Asif was so obsessed with knowing that the songs were going to be centerpiece that he said, why don't we go bigger and bigger? Who's the living great artist, Bade Ghulam Ali Khan? Let's get him also into the movie. And there's a whole interesting clip we want to share with you about how Bade Ghulam Ali Khan was invited to be part of Mughal-e-Azam.
आपके ये फिल्म मुगल-ए-आज़म में आसिफ साहब फरमाने लगे कि तानसेन का गाना किससे गवाइएगा, तो मैंने कहा इस दौर का, इस ज़माने का जो तानसेन है वही गाए तो बेहतर है। कौन है वो? आसिफ साहब सिगरेट यूँ पीते थे और उसका ऐश गुल यूँ झाड़ते थे, ये स्टाइल था उनका। कौन है वो? मैंने कहा बड़े गुलाम अली खान साहब, लेकिन वो फिल्मों में गाते नहीं हैं। तो कहने आप वक्त लीजिए, उनसे अपॉइंटमेंट लीजिए, मैं चलता हूँ। मैंने वक्त लिया, आसिफ साहब मेरे साथ गए, बड़े गुलाम अली खान साहब को मैंने आदाब किया। वो कहने कैसे बेटा, कैसे तशरीफ़ लाए, क्या है? मैंने कहा हुजूर एक फ़िल्म बन रही है मुग़ल-ए-आज़म, और ये ऐसी फिल्म है कि दोबारा नहीं बनेगी, और आपके शान के शाया है, आप इसमें हमारे साथ अगर कोऑपरेट करें, हमारा साथ दें। एक गाना है तानसेन का, हम आवाज़ आपकी इस्तेमाल करना चाहते हैं, आपसे गवाना चाहते हैं, तो आप अगर ये मेहरबानी फरमाएं। कहने साहब मैं फिल्मों में तो गाता नहीं हूँ, कोई जलसा हो, संगीत सम्मेलन हो, उसके लिए ले चलिए, मैं गाऊंगा। तो आसिफ साहब ने फौरन सिगरेट का कश लेते हुए चुटकी बजाई, खान साहब गाना आप ही गाएंगे। तो बड़े गुलाम अली खान साहब ने बड़े एक झुंझला के मुझे देखा, फिर उनको देखा, फिर मुझसे कह दिए कौन साहब हैं, ये किसको ले आए आप साथ में? मैंने कहा साहब ये प्रोड्यूसर और डायरेक्टर है इसके। अब साहब कोई भी हो, लेकिन मैं जब कह रहा हूँ कि मैं नहीं गाऊंगा तो ज़बरदस्ती ये कह रहे हैं आप ही गाएंगे। फिर आसिफ साहब ने गाना आप ही गाएंगे, कीमत आपकी, उसमें दूसरा लफ्ज नहीं कहूँगा, मगर गाना आप ही गाएंगे। फिर खान साहब ने इधर उधर देखा, मैं उससे कहने ज़रा बाहर आइए, बालकनी में ले गए मुझे। कहने मैं कुछ ऐसी बात कह दूँ इससे कि भाग जाए। मैंने कहा हुजूर मेरे ही नुकसान होगा। कहने आपका नुकसान क्यों होगा? मैंने कहा मुझे जो इज्जत मिलेगी आपके गाने से, तो उससे मैं महरूम रह जाऊँगा, आप क्या कहेंगे? तो कहने लगे मैं कीमत इतनी मांगूंगा कि भाग जाएगा। मैंने कहा वो हक आपको हासिल है, आप ये कह सकते हैं। आए खान साहब फिर रूम में जहाँ आसिफ साहब बैठे थे। अच्छा साहब मैं गाना गाऊंगा, 25,000 लूंगा एक गाने के। उस जमाने में बड़े से बड़ा प्लेबैक सिंगर 500 और 1000 रुपए से ज्यादा कीमत नहीं मिलती। उन्होंने ये रकम मांगी। आसिफ साहब बस खान साहब जी आप तो अनमोल हैं, आपकी तो कोई कीमत ही नहीं है। हो गई बात, ये 10,000 रुपए एडवांस रखिए। बड़े गुलाम अली खान साहब तो हैरत में पड़ गए, फिर मुझसे कहने बड़ा कदरदान में लगता है। गरज ये इस तरह से गुलाम अली खान साहब आए, उनको यहाँ
And well, the sad part is that first of all, he refused to record in advance, and he decided that he was going to, when the film was shot, then he will watch the scene, and while the scene was going on, he'll record it. And ended up not, he had so many beautiful things which he sang, and somehow he sang this one, and which wasn't very good. If those who want to be initiated with Bade Ghulam Ali Khan are not familiar with it, Google, only audio is available, very, very, very small piece, I think in Bhairavi, Jal Jamuna Bharan Kaise Jaun. उनके भजन भी बहुत हैं, but Jal Jamuna Bharan Kaise Jaun by Bade Ghulam Ali Khan. It is unbelievable. So beautiful, you'll cry. Anyway.
Let's jump to 1972. And the next movie we're going to talk about is Pakeezah. And Pakeezah is an interesting movie for a very simple reason. It fits in the genre of movies called Muslim social. This is a genre of category for about 25, 30 years, from 50s onwards till 80s. And again, the movies that you might remember from the genre like Garam Hawa, Bazaar, Nikah, these touched upon the Nawabi life, the culture of that, or touched upon socioeconomic issues of facing the community at that time. We talked about Chaudhry Ka Chand, which was a good example of a movie produced by Gurudutt, which was in the same genre. What's interesting is, of course, just like Mughal-e-Azam took so many years, Kamal Amrohi, who was the writer-director of this one, was obsessed by it. And the movie, he's the same guy who made Mahal in 1949. And the movie started in 1956. And from 56 to 64, they made it. And in between, after 64, Meena Kumari, who happened to be his wife, got separated. And the whole movie stopped. And after a gap, 69, again, it resumed in 71. So it's one of those movies, once again, had virtually no shot of ever getting completed. and people used to joke about the fact that Pakeezah hai to pata nahi banegi na banegi. Some people consider it to be the best performance of Meena Kumari. And like very quickly, Bina Kumari was a child actress like Madhubala, and like her, passed away young at 38 years of age, did 90 movies or so. This by many is considered her most famous movie, partly because she passed away within a month of the movie getting released. And apparently that gave a commercial boost to the movie, ironically. She was called Mahajabeen Bano. आप बताएं इस मूवी के बारे में कुछ कहना चाहते हैं आप कमाल अमरोही और इस मूवी की मेकिंग पे?
Yeah, you know, you can tell that people have aged throughout the movie. Ashok Kumar became older, Meena Kumari became, you know, gained weight, and she was not well and so forth, you know. But which the song we starting
Let's start with the Chalte Chalte. Let's start with that.
So I want to say, you know, on my list of very few songs which were photographed, directed best, like we talked about, you know, Devdas ka, you know, Mitwa and so forth. This is one of those songs. So hua kya ki mujra scene hai, aadmi baitha hua hai, log baithe hue hain, and Meena Kumari sits and sings, and she's supposed to dance. Except her stomach was bloated, you know, she was very sick. She was just perked up only before with the camera. They had to put on very loose clothes on her to hide away. She could not dance. So he did something genius, and everybody knows it. He put two Kathak dancers behind her. And while she is sitting, your eye, of course, goes to the Kathak dancers because they are doing beautiful, graceful movements, you know, in unison and so forth, you know. And of course, the music is beautiful and the words are beautiful. So let's watch it a little bit.
Let's do it. Lovely song. Lovely song. What I didn't realize that the songs were recorded in Ghulam Muhammad's music was recorded in 1955 and the movie came out in 72.
I know.
Like, what a bizarre, like today, you can't even say recording music of today were last 5 years. And this was classic music recorded 15 plus years before the movie's release and was a super hit music.
So remind me in one of our future podcasts, we don't have time, talk about the advantages of limited palette. When you have limitations like Meena Kumari can't dance, she's not doing well, what results? So there are examples of Iranian cinema, there's an example of Picasso, Blue Period, वगैरह वगैरह. So note कर लेते हैं. आगे चलते हैं. तो ठाड़े रहियो.
बताइए. How do you want to set it up?
It's in Ragman, you know. So everybody knows from Rajasthan, everybody singer and everybody's mother-in-law has sung Kesariya Balamwa.
That's right.
No, so सबने सुना हुआ है.
Yeah.
केसरिया बालम, जिसको पूछो कि पत्थर फेंको ना तो बोलना शुरू कर देता है केसरिया बालम.
Kesariya Balam. Classic.
It's rag mand or mand बोलते हैं. This is from Rajasthan. It's actually a folk tune, but it's become a raga and so forth. You know, like Tu Chanda Main Chandni. Remember that was in rag mand. You know, if you are interested, those interested in classical music, look for Brij Bhushan Kabra. Brij Bhushan Kabra बड़ा famous है. Guitar bajata hai, I think, and his rag mand is one of the best and so in my opinion. Anyway, so Thade Rahiyo is a Rajasthani tune, and they say Majroor Sultanpuri wrote it, but actually the first words were written by Kamal Amrohi. I should also mention rag mand, not to bore everybody, ki the Guru Nanak Shabads, you know, which are sung, are generally sung in Desh and Asa are the ragas, you know, especially Desh and so forth. But Thakur Tum Sharnai Aaya, people might remember, you know, Vishnu Dikambar ka bahut famous hai. Thakur Tum Sharnai Aaya is actually a Shabad from Guru Nanak. It is in Ragmand. Anyway, so Thade Rahiyo, we have the song and a surprise.
चीख के बोली यार घर से जो निकले खबरदार ठाणे घर में बचेगा ना एक बाल ठाणे रहियो बोले चल मन सा बिंग माल भूल के कलब की बार बिगाल ठाणे रहियो
मारा बन्ना सजे धजे धन धन पर खूब लगावे मिरर में खुद को देख देख के मन ही मन मुस्कावे मन ने छोड़ दिया बन्ना मारा सेल्फी से दिल है छोड़ दिया कि मन ने छोड़ दिया बन्ना मारा सेल्फी से दिल है छोड़ दिया ठाणे रहियो
So
Not for the faint of heart. मगर समझ गए कि कहीं मिक्स एंड मैच हो सकते थे. Even Pakeezah could be mixed and match. ये हमारे ख्याल में नहीं था.
No, it
But-
was like a jolt after watching all those wonderful things. It's like, what happened on the screen?
ठंडा
I
ठंडा
know.
पानी, ठंडे
I
ठंडे
thought-
पानी से.
I thought we should take a glimpse of what the new generation is doing, you know. So Pakeezah had
dead.
six or eight more songs which were not included in the film. Of those, two are very good. If you want to search for it, Ye Kiski Aankh Ka Noor Ho Tum is by Mohammed Rafi in Rag Yaman. Ye Kiski Aankh Ka Noor Ho Tum. And Lata Mangeshkar, I think, hai Tanhai Sunaya Karti Hai, also in Mand. Tanhai Sunaya Karti Hai, Tute Hue or Beete Hue Dil Ka Afsana. Very nice song. And there were other songs too, but these two were very good. You know, I think they were one written by Majroo, one written by Kamal Amrohi. Aage chale?
What's interesting about last piece is that the movie ki story Pakeezah ki thodi aise hi thi, but there's a very famous scene from the movie, train scene, and people either remember the songs like we saw the Mujras Vera, or they remember the train scene. And in fact, one of the critics said that it is probably one of the top 10 dialogues of Indian cinema ever. Right?
It is.
So,
I remember the song Chalte Chalte after all those years, you know, and then it takes 15 beats, you know, ye chirag bujh rahe hain, and then there is no music. There's just, you know, ton, 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 ton for 15 beats and so forth. I remember that. And I remember this one particular scene.
So let's check it out. Short scene.
The thing. Oh.
Go ahead.
The thing about that dialogue is that Rajkumar scripts it down for her by just looking at her feet, not knowing that she's a dancer. And that sticks to her. And that's what starts the turmoil in her lifestyle, her love story,
of
and
course.
being what she is, and that she's doing it, which is an anathema to her boyfriend.
Yeah. Let's have a look. Let's go through it. It's a short scene. Interesting. Lovely scene. The dialogue, and of course, Rajkumar's, his delivery style, of course.
Yeah. By the way, before we move on to Umrao Jaan, we should mention that Meena Kumari was a poet herself.
That's right.
And sang. You know, there is a CD recording available of her. She writes, I write, I sing, I think it's called Meena Kumari. Bahut achhe hain. I'll quote a couple of lines. चांद तन्हा है आसमां तन्हा चांद तन्हा है आसमां तन्हा दिल मिला है कहाँ कहाँ तन्हा बुझ गई आस छुप गया तारा थरथराता रहा धुआं तन्हा हम सफर कोई गर मिले भी कहीं दोनों चलते रहे तन्हा तन्हा राह देखा करेगा सदियों तक छोड़ जाएंगे ये जहां तन्हा. Anyway, so check it out. You know, I write, I recite by Meena Kumari. Aage chale?
Chale. The last piece was her epitaph. She wrote herself, apparently. And the English translation of that is, she ended life with a broken fiddle, with a broken song, with a broken heart, but not a single regret. I don't know the Urdu version of it, but beautiful. She was considered tragedy queen for a good reason for that.
By the way, she charged 1 rupee for her role in Pakeezah. वो ज़्यादा हो गया.
हाँ, ज़्यादा. So let's keep moving. We are now down to our last film, Umrao Jaan. And again, this movie came in 1981. And just to set the movie up, it is one of my favorite movies of the genre. It's clearly, in my humble opinion, the best of the 4, if you enjoy it. And then Muzaffar Ali, the filmmaker, has a very unique sensibility. He's, born to a royal family, I understand. But more importantly, he made only 2 or 3 movies. Gaman came later, and this one. And the music of this is beautiful Khayyam poetry. What's unique about it is that the story is set in 1840s, around the that era and the turmoil, and the story of a Tawayef, a young girl who's abducted, becomes a Tawayef, etc. It's very poignant, and by some measure, Rekha's best performance. And within 3-4 years of that time, Rekha did 4 or 5 movies in her career, which I think stood apart from all her movies before and after, which was, she did at that time Khubsurat, Ghar, Kalyug, Ijazat, Vijeta, Utsav. These were all like within 5-6 years of each other, that set her apart from so much of her other work that came before or later. So you have any, what do you think about Rekha and her performance?
Rekha is great. My casting director had approached her, apart from Nandita Das and other people, for my film, which was set in Nainital. And by coincidence, she was actually the lover of the father of our protagonist, and she's a classical singer in that film. So anyway, film to nahi bani fir. Okay. So
let's start with a wonderful medley that we'll share.
लेकिन ये क्या कि गैर का, लेकिन ये क्या कि गैर का, लेकिन ये क्या कि गैर का एहसान लीजिए, लेकिन ये क्या कि गैर का एहसान लीजिए। दिल चीज़ क्या है आप मेरी जान लीजिए। बुला रहा है कौन, बुला रहा है कौन मुझको चिलमरों के उस तरफ, मेरे लिए
जिंदगी जब भी तेरी बज़्म में लाती है हमें, ये ज़मीं चांद से बेहतर नजर आती है हमें, ये ज़मीं चांद से बेहतर नजर आती है हमें। हर मुलाकात का अंजाम जुदाई क्यों है, हर मुलाकात का अंजाम जुदाई क्यों है। अब तो हर बात यही बात सताती है हमें, अब तो हर बात यही बात सताती है हमें, ये ज़मीं चांद से बेहतर।
So दिल चीज क्या है, ये क्या जगह है दोस्तों, both are in राग बिहाग, and जिंदगी जब भी तेरी, यमन कल्याण, beautiful classical pieces, very well sung, so forth. By the way, Anurag ji, you know that every movie has to be messed up by being remade in India, right?
Yes, I was going to say, चुप ही रहते तो cat is out of the bag. Please, गलती से अगर आप उमराव जान के later movie ना देखें, the same guy who made Border and other kind of movies बहुत ही बेकार है.
Aishwarya Rai and Abhishek Ji Bachchan ji.
Disaster.
I mean, क्या दिमाग खराब हुआ लोगों का, I mean, क्या इनको काम नहीं है, not that there's lack of stories in India and Pakistan, I mean, क्या बेवकूफी है, क्या बताएं.
But of course, Anarkali की कहानी 2-3 बार अच्छी से बन चुकी है, और this is a wonderful story, and I think Muzaffar Ali का sentiment and his sensibility is so unique.
Muzaffar Ali also made a film called Agaman, which is very difficult to find if I remember, but कभी मिले तो देखना उसको.
My favorite part of Muzaffar Ali is that he is a composer also, and apparently a fashion designer in his own right. But composer में he gave music to Abida Praveen's album, Rakse Bismil, which is among one of the top 1 to top 5 albums of Abida Praveen. And the music is by Muzaffar Ali. It's like very talented.
Very good.
And Asha Bhosle, of course, was a surprise of this movie, right? Umrao Jaan, jo hum baat kar rahe hain. Because at that time, Lata was over her peak, and or whatever reason was not chosen. And Asha pulled off such classical singing with the plomb, right? So बहुत ही कमाल की चीज है. We're gonna have a go up, set up करिए अगला हमारा जो clip है.
So only one clip left, no?
हाँ जी.
So this is a surprise. By the way, that young woman Anjali Gaikwad was only 15 years old when she sang "Ye Kya Jagah Hai Dost." I mean, imagine, hopefully she'll go on to do wonderful things like Shreya Ghoshal. So इसको कुछ नहीं बताते. Don't say anything. Just play the. Unbelievable! What
a surprise!
I can't sing enough praises of this. First of all, not much orchestra, such a beautiful voice. And then if you go further and think about personal stories, of her life and so forth, beautiful words, Justaju जिसकी थी उसको न तो न पाया हमने, इस बहाने से मगर देख ली दुनिया हमने. So, let's talk for a couple of minutes. Most of the novels, most of the stories, most of our life stories are about a justaju, are about looking for something, whether it's fame, love, peace,
that's right,
kuch bhi hai, paisa, jo bhi hai, so forth and all that. And then there are different directions as to where you can go. Jisko na paya humne. So like देवदास बन सकते हैं, शराब पी के जिंदगी बर्बाद करते हैं. देवडी बन सकते हैं, किसी और को पकड़ के चले जा सकते हैं, so forth, या संन्यास ले सकते हैं. I mean, there are so many other options which are applicable to us, जुस्तजू जिसकी थी, क्योंकि सब तेरे ऐसे है नहीं ना कि सबको तो मिलता नहीं है जो चाहिए. हमारे ऐसे लोग हैं जिनको नहीं मिलता है. So, but there are different attitudes. You can. Are you familiar with Maithili Sharan Gupta?
Naam suna hai, but I can't be. Maybe some of the people in the audience are. I've heard of the name, but I'm not familiar.
I do.
Bataiye.
Maithili Sharan Gupta. So
bilkul.
he was a poet laureate of India, and he's famous. Sun lo, bhai, log sun lo. He was famous for this line, "Sakhi wo mujhse keh kar jaate." You know what I'm talking about?
Ji nahi.
So Bhagwan Buddha, left his palace, his wife Yashodhara, and son Rahul, and went into the forest to look for enlightenment and so forth. So Maithili Sharan Gupta wrote a poem on behalf of Yashodhara,
his wife. Yeah,
his wife. Nobody pays attention to her. Sab Bhagwan Buddha ke piche lage hue hain, which is of course appropriate. But uski taraf, on her behalf, वो कहता है, सखी वो मुझसे कहकर जाते, तो क्या मुझको अपनी पथ बाधा ही पाते? मुझको बहुत उन्होंने माना, फिर भी क्या पूरा पहचाना, and on कि जाना ही था तो यार बोल देते, मैं उसको रोकती नहीं. I understand what he needs to do. He needs to go look for bigger things in life and so forth. Sakhi wo mujhse kya karo. Anyway, the reason I'm remembering Maithili Sharan Gupta is, my God, this is 60 years or so ago. There's a line of Maithili Sharan Gupta about Ram, Bhagwan Ram. अब सुन तू, ध्यान से सुन, बैठा हुआ है.
बैठा ही हो.
राम तुम मानव हो, राम तुम मानव हो, ईश्वर नहीं हो क्या? राम तुम मानव हो, ईश्वर नहीं हो क्या? तो मैं निरीश्वर हूं, ईश्वर क्षमा करे. कि राम, उसको बताया किसी ने कि राम was actually a human being, not God. तो he is addressing राम, जुस्तजू जिसकी थी वो नहीं मिलने वाला, because वो अलग निकल गया. He says कि if you are not God, then I am without a God. May God forgive me.
Powerful sentiment. He was.
तो मीरा has a bhajan ना, सबको मालूम है. जो तुम तोड़ो पिया मैं ना ही तोड़ू रे, तोड़ी प्रीत छोड़ी कृष्णा कौन संग जोड़. लता मंगेशकर का झनक झनक पायल बाजे में है. That is a very, and there's Vani Jairam also sang it in Silsila and so forth and all this stuff. So
interesting. My only closing thought on what you're saying is that you give an example of Siddharth leaving and how this poet reflected on Yashodhara's perspective. कि मुझे कहकर जाते, मैं आपकी बाधा ना बनती. So I happen to be reading Dhampad, which is obviously Eknath Ishwaran की translation अगर आप पढ़ें Dhampad की, beautiful. In that, Eknath Ishwar actually has a counter to that. Counter मतलब कि reply to that, not that. And he says beautifully that when Siddharth found enlightenment and became Buddha and came back to the palace, everybody greeted him as a monk and a sage, etc. And everybody said to Yashodhara, your husband has come, Buddha has come, go meet him. Like everybody's prostrating themselves in the streets because Buddha is coming back. And she said, no, if there is any worth in my love, he'll come to me. This is at the other side of the journey. And the beautiful piece I want to close out with is that Buddha comes back to her room alone. The parable goes, of course, like that.
भीख मांगता है ना उससे.
So he goes back to her and says, you have not heard yet a word of dharma, but in your love, you have followed me without question for many lives. The time for tears is over. I will teach you the way that leads beyond sorrow. And the love you have shown for me will embrace the world. So that's closing of the beautiful loop between how both sides of the Justaju and so forth, close of it. So we've gone quite deep. We have probably
एक मिनट और. So you remember Herman Hesse's book Siddharth?
Hanji, of course. Yeah.
तो उसके end में I think Siddharth goes to his friend. Last scene hai, I think, movie also, Shashi Kapoor and Simi, and was famous because Simi had a nude scene in it and so forth. Anyway, chodo usko. But Siddharth, eventually Govinda asked Siddharth कि मुझे बताओ कि my path is very hard. Tell me something and understand. जिंदगी भर मैं खोजता रहा. So Siddharth says, listen to this. Stop searching. Stop searching. Stop worrying. Just learn to give love. Just learn to give love and be at peace. That's it. Be at peace. You know, in the end, choti bate, you know, simple tasks in which you take pleasure, which brings joy to others.
Harish, we're going to close on that. We're going to close out with a loop. And thank you. We have overstayed our welcome. Thank you as always.
I have a request. फरमाइश है मेरी एक.
हाँ जी,
ऐसा है कि we should have a part 2 of the today's session, and we should discuss the poetry by Rajinder Krishan and Sri Ramchandra and Shakil and Nosha. ये मेरी फरमाइश है.
Thank you for your suggestion. We will take that seriously and obviously incorporate that.
You do wonderful job, you and Harish. I think I enjoy your 1 hour, 1.5 hours.
ये तो जशवंत बिस्कुट भेज देना एक दो.
मैं तेरे को बिस्कुट क्या यार, मैं तेरे को और भी मिठाई भेज दूंगा.
Thank you very much. It was a nice production.
Thank you. We're going to close out with a 2-minute video loop. You're welcome to exit. Thank you so much for listening to us. We welcome your suggestions.
Okay. I think one of the things about this Umrao Jaan has become Rekha's signature film, but the importance of that and Pakeezah is that, and the theme then reflects, and people therefore like it, that we are all prisoners of our environment, and in spite of all the effort, in spite of the courage the youngsters develop, they're unable to get out of it. And I think that's the tragedy reflected. Courtesans can't get out, even their families shun them. So it's a dead end in many ways. Anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll close out with this beautiful, lovely piece of music. And good morning, good evening. Have a wonderful day.